Welcome to today's deep dive into one of the most mysterious and debated passages in the Bible, Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. This passage has sparked countless discussions over the centuries. Were the sons of God really fallen angels who took human wives? Who exactly were the Nephilim? And how do they fit into this strange and fascinating story? By the end of this video, you'll have a well-grounded, Bible-based answer to these questions, along with strong arguments to understand the true nature of this passage. Before we tackle the sons of God and the Nephilim, we need to understand the context of Genesis chapter 6. The story comes after the genealogies of Cain and Seth, the two surviving sons of Adam and Eve. Cain's line, associated with wickedness, and Seth's line, associated with godliness, are traced through Genesis chapters 4 and 5. In Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, it says, "When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose." Genesis 6, 1 to 2, NIV. Right away, we're introduced to two groups, the sons of God and the daughters of humans. But who are these sons of God? One popular interpretation is that the sons of God were fallen angels. According to this view, angels left their heavenly realm, took human wives, and produced a race of hybrid beings known as the Nephilim. This is supported by ancient texts like the Book of Enoch and later Jewish writings, which promote the idea of angels cohabiting with humans. This view is often backed by other Bible verses that seem to refer to angels. Job chapter 1 verse 6 says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." Jude chapter 1 verse 6 talks about angels who abandoned their proper dwelling, and the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. So is Genesis chapter 6 talking about angels who rebelled against God and took human wives? Could the Nephilim be the offspring of these unnatural unions? Let's start with what Jesus himself said about angels. In Matthew chapter 22 verse 30, Jesus explains that at the resurrection people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. Here Jesus makes it clear that angels do not marry. So how could fallen angels have physical relationships with human women? The very nature of angels as spiritual beings seems to rule out this possibility. They don't possess bodies like humans do. Also, the idea of angels having physical offspring, the Nephilim, introduces hybrid beings into the Bible's narrative, something that isn't clearly supported elsewhere in Scripture. Genesis chapter 6 verse 4 describes the Nephilim as mighty men and men of renown. However, it does not explicitly say they were part angel or part human. It simply describes them as human giants or warriors. A more biblically consistent view is that the sons of God were not angels at all. Instead, they were the descendants of Seth, the godly lineage that followed God and called on his name. The daughters of men were likely the descendants of Cain, the lineage that rebelled against God. The Hebrew phrase, Beni Elohim, translates to sons of God. This term is used in other places in the Hebrew Bible, such as Job chapter 1 verse 6 and Job chapter 38 verse 7, where it clearly refers to angels. However, in the context of Genesis chapter 6, the use of this phrase doesn't automatically require a supernatural interpretation, and here's why. The term Elohim is sometimes used in the Bible to refer to God, but it can also mean divine beings or mighty ones. Even humans such as judges or kings have been referred to as Elohim in places like Exodus chapter 21 verse 6 and Psalm 82 verse 6. So Beni Elohim could refer to godly men or rulers who saw themselves as having divine authority. In the Sethite view, sons of God refers to the descendants of Seth, who are called sons of God because they are part of a line that worshipped and followed God. The Hebrew phrase for daughters of men is Benot HaAdam. This phrase literally means daughters of Adam or daughters of mankind. In Hebrew, Adam, is used to represent humanity in general, not just the individual Adam. This supports the interpretation that these daughters represent human women as a whole, not a special or divine group. In the Sethite view, the daughters of men would represent ungodly women, specifically the descendants of Cain, who were known for their wickedness. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 26, we read, "At that time people began to call on the name of the Lord." This verse refers to the line of Seth, a line associated with faithfulness to God. The Sethite view explains that the godly men from Seth's lineage began to marry ungodly women from Cain's lineage, leading to widespread moral corruption. Instead of keeping their faith pure, they compromised. And this intermarriage between the godly and ungodly lines led to the wickedness that filled the earth. As a result, God decided to cleanse the world through the flood. This view avoids the theological problems of angels marrying humans. It keeps the focus on human sinfulness and the growing corruption that ultimately provoked God to send the flood. So, who were the Nephilim? Were they really the offspring of angels and humans? The Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. Notice that the verse does not explicitly state that the Nephilim were the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. It simply says that the Nephilim were present during that time. The term Nephilim comes from the Hebrew root naphal, which means to fall or fallen ones. Some translations even refer to them as giants. So Nephilim could refer to men of renown who fell morally or were powerful figures in the world, not necessarily supernatural beings. Most likely the Nephilim were mighty human warriors, known for their physical strength and size. They were called men of renown because of their reputation and accomplishments, not because they were part angel. This fits well within the biblical pattern of emphasizing human sinfulness. These Nephilim were likely powerful, possibly violent figures who contributed to the increasing wickedness on earth, further justifying God's decision to bring the flood. The Bible is clear that human sin is the driving force behind the flood, not the actions of fallen angels. In Genesis 6, verse 5, just after the mention of the Nephilim, the text says, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The flood was not a result of angelic sin. It was the wickedness of humanity, a complete departure from God's ways that led to his judgment. Genesis focuses on human moral failure. Even in the New Testament, the emphasis is on the corruption of humanity during the days of Noah. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 20 says, "In the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water." This passage highlights human disobedience. Both Jude 1 verse 6 and 2 Peter 2 verse 4 mention angels who sinned, left their proper place, and are now bound in darkness awaiting judgment. Some have linked these verses to Genesis 6, where the sons of God are thought by some to be fallen angels who took human wives. However, there are important reasons why these two verses may not directly refer to Genesis 6 and the fallen angels' interpretation. Jude 1 verse 6 speaks about angels who abandoned their proper dwelling and are kept in darkness for judgment. It is important to consider the surrounding verses and the overall theme of Jude, which is about false teachers, moral corruption, and God's judgment. The preceding verse, Jude 1 verse 5, mentions the Israelites who were rescued from Egypt but later destroyed due to unbelief. The following verse, Jude 1 verse 7, refers to Sodom and Gomorrah, cities that engaged in sexual immorality and were judged by fire. So, Jude is offering a series of examples of judgment on those who abandon their proper role or place. Jude does not explicitly mention Genesis 6, nor does it connect the sin of these angels to marrying human women. Instead, Jude emphasizes their rebellion against their God-given role and authority. 2 Peter 2 verse 4 also refers to angels who sinned and were cast into Tartarus, a Greek term for the deepest abyss in hell. These angels are held in chains of darkness until judgment. Like Jude, 2 Peter 2 is about God's judgment on the wicked. Peter provides examples of God's punishment for rebellion, starting with sinful angels, followed by the flood in Noah's time, and then the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The reference to sinful angels here does not necessarily tie directly to Genesis 6, while some argue that the timing of the flood in the next verse might suggest a connection. The text does not explicitly say that these angels' sin involved human women. Both Jude chapter 1 verse 6 and 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 4 emphasize the rebellion of angels in abandoning their proper position or authority. Neither passage clearly connects this rebellion to intermarrying with humans. as is often suggested in interpretations of Genesis chapter 6. The term abandoned their proper dwelling could refer to Satan's rebellion or another act of disobedience where angels left their heavenly duties. The Bible speaks elsewhere about angels rebelling against God, such as in Revelation chapter 12, where Satan and his angels fought against God. Neither Jude nor Peter directly mentions angels intermarrying with human women or producing Nephilim, as in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. They simply refer to angels sinning or abandoning their roles. Some early Jewish writings, like the Book of Enoch, which describe angels taking human wives, may have influenced certain interpretations of these verses. However, the canonical Bible itself does not necessarily make this connection. Many early church fathers interpreted these verses as referring to the fall of Satan and his angels, not the event in Genesis 6. Many scholars believe that both Jude and Peter are referencing a general rebellion of angels, possibly linked to Satan's rebellion against God, described in passages like Isaiah 14 or Revelation 12. This rebellion resulted in some angels being cast out of heaven and held in chains awaiting judgment. Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9 describes a war in heaven where Satan and his angels were cast down to the earth. This rebellion is typically understood to be the original fall of Satan and his followers, and it aligns well with Jude and Peter's description of angels who did not keep their positions of authority. So, were the sons of God in Genesis 6 fallen angels? Given the theological issues and the biblical context, it's more likely that the sons of God were descendants of Seth, the godly line, who compromised their faith by marrying ungodly women. The Nephilim, rather than being angelic hybrids, were likely mighty human warriors, known for their power but contributing to the increasing wickedness of the time. This passage ultimately is about human sin and the consequences of turning away from God's ways. It's a powerful reminder that when we compromise our faith, even in seemingly small ways, the effects can spiral out of control. As believers, we're called to remain faithful to God, especially in a world filled with temptation and corruption. Genesis 6 teaches us about the importance of holding fast to God's ways and not being swayed by the world's standards. Let's live in a way that reflects God's righteousness, avoiding the moral decline that led to judgment in Noah's day. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the mysteries of the Bible.